What's the first thing that strikes you about Goblet of Fire? What's the first thing you notice? Okay, it opens with not Harry. Well, first thing. Where does it open? Not number 4 Privet Drive. Books 1 through 3 all open number 4 Privet Drive. So that when you got book 4, summer of 2000, what were you expecting? Why? Because she created this formula. And the formula was we always open, except for book 1, which we're introduced to Harry, okay, where we're used to the same beginning. And then she kind of throws this wrinkle in. Where does book 5 begin? Number 4 Privet Drive. Where's book 6 begin? The other minister. Okay. Why does she do this? Why does she change the formula? I mean, formula worked pretty well for 1 through 3, right?
Yeah, but now I'm paying attention.
Grabs your attention.
Okay, grab your attention. Think marketing and also think reviews. What might she be doing? Might. I'm not saying she is. I'm just throwing this out as a possibility. Maybe she doesn't want to be pigeonholed as a quote-unquote formulaic writer. As a writer simply following kind of a, here's a to-do list in my writing. Start with Harry. So she starts at the Riddle House. Okay. What else? What do we see? First chapter. That we've not seen before. Well, yeah, it does talk about what happened 50 years ago, essentially. Not quite 50, but what else? Okay. Yeah, we see our first death. Well, our first murder. We've had murders alluded to in the previous book. Peter Pettigrew killed how many muggles? Imagine how torn his soul is. Okay? So we witness an actual murder. One of you said, so the first, this book opens darker. Okay? How old is Rowling's kind of original audience at this point? How old do you assume they were when they began reading it? 10, 11? I know one of you said you were 5 when you began reading them. Okay? So let's assume 10 or 11. Let's assume that her original target audience is the age of Harry. How old is Harry in this book? Okay. What do Harry, Ron, and Hermione tell Sirius when they're off in Hogsmeade one time? And Sirius says, oh, well, you wouldn't understand. Try us. What do 14-year-olds... Describe the experience of being 14. You're not a kid anymore, right? But you're not an adult anymore, or yet. You want to be. You want to be treated like an adult. You don't want to be treated like a kid unless things are really bad. And then you want that comfort of being a kid. Okay? So we see Harry in a really difficult year. And we see the novels turn much, much darker from this point on. This is kind of the point, I think, that Tolkien kind of suggests in The Lord of the Rings, where he has Sam and Frodo talking about stories. And Sam says at one point, maybe this is the point in the story when the kid tells, close the book now, Dad. I don't want to hear what happens from here on. I mean, you see an old vet Frank Bryce is a World War II veteran. You see an old veteran get murdered, it doesn't augur well for the rest of the story. So, before he gets murdered, let's back up a little bit. We see Wormtail with Lord Voldemort. Notice, what's the difference between this Lord Voldemort and the Lord Voldemort we saw in Book 1? He has a kind of body, a proto-body of sorts. What's it described as? It's like a baby. Ugly baby, but, can talk. What else can it do? Who kills Frank Bryce? Not Nagini. Nagini's going to eat Frank Bryce. Voldemort does. Wormtail turns his chair, and it's like Frank Bryce, starts to scream, Avada Kedavra, the high, clear, cold voice. And that's when Harry wakes up. But what do we hear Wormtail talking to? I'm going to use my nickname, Voldy, about. It's a lot easier to say early in the morning. What's he talking to Voldy about? Okay, Bertha Jorkins, what else? We can use somebody else. Does it have to be Harry Potter? For Voldy's specific plan, which Wormtail isn't necessarily privy to, yes, it does have to be Harry Potter. For Wormtail's understanding of the plan, can it be anybody else? Who does the anybody have to be? An enemy of Voldemort. Okay, which pretty much describes who in the Wizarding World? Everybody not a Death Eater. Okay? So it could apply. Voldemort thinks Wormtail is trying to what? Trying to protect Harry. What else? Trying to leave. He doesn't trust him. He talks about his faithful servant. Okay. Harry wakes up 200 miles away. Be nice if we knew where Little Hangleton actually was. We don't, because then you can draw a map of a radius. Okay, get an idea. We know where Harry is. He's somewhere in Surrey. Little Winging. But there is no Little Winging. Surrey's a pretty big area. So Little Hangleton's probably somewhere in the Midlands, depending on where in Surrey. Like if you were to take Oxford from London, put a string there, just draw an arc, somewhere in those areas. So Harry wakes up, and he's troubled because of his scar. What does he immediately start to do? What's he start to think? What would my friend say? So he kind of mentally plays the part of Hermione, the part of Ron. What's Hermione say? Yeah, let me find a library, okay? What's Ron say? Notice Ron immediately goes where? It's Voldemort. Can he be near? Harry doesn't really like that idea. So, he finally realizes he can write to Sirius, so he writes to Sirius. Okay? Next day, letter arrives from the Weasleys. Describe this letter. More specifically, describe the envelope. Except for the 1 square inch where Harry's name is. Okay? So the Weasleys come to get Harry to rescue him from his summer of hell. And what does poor Arthur Weasley not think about? Why in the world would you cover up a fireplace? Because it's dirty? Because you want to use the wall? Okay.
Because you don't want letters.
Maybe because you don't want letters coming down your chimney. We don't know when he actually sealed it up, but you know. So they travel by flue powder, not realizing the chimney is closed. And as they get ready to leave, Fred and George get Harry's stuff up. Fred or George, I can't remember which one, drops the tongue toffee. And just before they leave, Harry says, bye then. Dursleys didn't say anything at all. Harry moved toward the fire, but just as he reached the edge of the hearth, Mr. Weasley put out a hand and held him back. He was looking at the Dursleys in amazement. Harry said goodbye to you. Didn't you hear him? Harry, it doesn't matter. Honestly, I don't care. Mr. Weasley, however, is still holding Harry's shoulder. You aren't going to see your nephew till next summer. Surely you're going to say goodbye. What is Arthur doing? Let me rephrase that. What is J.K. Rowling doing? Louder?
Trying to instill decency.
Trying to instill decency? Okay. Use another word for instill. Okay. Use another word. I won't make you go through all the synonyms of English language. Teach. She is teaching here. Whom is she teaching? The reader. Okay. Who else? Dursleys. Harry. Adults. As well as children. What is it she's teaching? Okay. Katie said, decency. What else is this? Notice Uncle Vernon, what he thinks. The idea of being taught consideration by a man who just blasted away half his living room walls, causing him a bit of suffering. He'd blown up his room, and now you're telling me to be considerate of others? Hello, mirror. But Mr. Weasley didn't intend to blow up the room, and he's going to make everything right. What about the Dursleys? Do they intend to be rude? Sometimes, yes. Though we're going to see when Dumbledore comes to pick up Harry in Book 6, Uncle Vernon's going to say, I don't mean to be rude. And what's Dumbledore going to say? But all too often, accidental rudeness occurs anyways. Okay? Goodbye, then, Vernon says. See you, says Harry. And we get the thing with the toffee. Okay? This is, I don't remember if it's the first, I think it is. This is really the first time where we see somebody attempt to teach the Dursleys. Your way of behavior isn't up to snuff. Your way of behavior needs improving. Okay? Why is Arthur doing this? Does he think the lesson's going to stick? I mean, I don't think so. I don't think he thinks the lesson's going to stick. Is he maybe doing this as much for Harry as he is for the Dursleys? Teaching Harry, Harry, you are worthy of consideration. What does that mean? Of consideration. Respect. Is it just because of who Harry is? Okay, this is the Weasleys we're talking about. How do they seemingly treat everyone? Well, with the exception of Molly towards Sirius. We'll talk about that later. With respect. They treat them as equals. Okay? That's what Arthur is trying to get across to Vernon. Okay? Then we hear the stuff about the Weasleys, wizarding wheezes. They get back to the burrow. Mrs. Weasley, as usual, goes all bonkers. Let's see here. We hear Percy talking about Bertha Jorkins. She's missing. He doesn't think it's anything important. What else do we learn about Percy in this book? Louder. He's working for the ministry. What did I hear? He's a turd. Okay.
He's really determined about cauldrons.
He's really determined about cauldrons. Why?
Because he sees that's his way to move up. He thinks it's important.
Because he wants to impress his boss. Why does he want to impress his boss so much? He sees Barty Crouch Sr. as a ladder to climb. This is his entry-level position. What have we already been told Percy wants? He wants power. He wants to be Minister of Magic. He's going to have the best damn cauldrons, the world has ever seen. Trump has just, invaded my mind. Skip to the port key. Okay, so they're getting ready to go off to the Quidditch World Cup, and I wondered yesterday as Ryan and I were coming back from Gloucester, and we had the trip from hell. Getting on the tube, and this is why I wanted to get out of Gloucester either earlier or stick around till later. Didn't work out. But got into Paddington right around 5:35, 5:50. And it's this way all the time. It's just wall-to-wall people. And when you're antisocial like I am, it's like, the plague. And then getting on the tube, where we were literally, pushing people, get in there. There's space there, kind of a thing. But one person got on just after I did, and the door starts to close, and her arm is literally out like this, and the door's closing on it. And I'm thinking, splinching. That's kind of like splinching. If you think about it, it's just that the arm's not, ending up somewhere else. Could be. Oh, one of my trips back from this same field trip before. One of my trips back, we had to stop in, I think it was Stroud, and take a detour up to Leamington Spa because somebody committed suicide on a track. They literally jumped off the platform onto a track. That's it. So they couldn't just remove the body and get the trains moving. No, they had to shut down the line. So we had to go from Stroud to Leamington Spa, I think it was to Warwick, to Oxford. 2-hour trip turned into about a 4.5-hour trip. And this was, that's right. And this was the summer when it was hotter than hell. Yesterday was not as hot as it was that day. It was a complete nightmare. Okay. So they go to the port key and we meet the Diggories. Describe Amos Diggory. He's very proud of his son. Who wouldn't be? I mean, Ced starred, what was that other stupid movie based upon those books? Yeah, that. Why is he proud of Cedric? He beat Harry Potter.
I mean, I would be pretty proud of my son.
Okay.
My son beats Harry Potter.
Okay. And that's what we're going to talk about.
I feel like he's very, I don't know, like he's a horse with blinders on. He likes to see what he sees and doesn't take anything.
Yeah.
Possibly.
He'll ignore the other facts of what
Th-
he's seeing.
Think about this for a moment.
He's the kid's.
Why is he so proud of Cedric? Okay, it's not just he beat Harry Potter. That's part of it. What else does the Diggory name have going for it? Nothing. What else are they known for within the novels? Zip, nada. But my son beat Harry Potter. If you were a nobody and your son beat Ronaldo, what would you think? Way to go, son, you know. If your son was the one who injured Ronaldo, way to go, son, you know. When my kid was playing soccer, because I used to play soccer and I did the same thing, I'd say, you know, if you can't beat him, trip him. It's the name of the game. Don't get caught. You know, you're right back there behind him. Just keep tapping him in the ankles. They'll get tired and they'll move away from you.
Professional soccer players are a bunch of good.
Well, Ronaldo is the biggest.
You say that, but those dudes are hitting each other pretty hard.
Yeah, they are. But Ronaldo takes dives if you touch him. I mean, he's a great. He's a ballet artist. Okay, Messi doesn't do that as much.
Oh, Messi's an actual wizard, I'm pretty sure.
Guy's amazing. Okay, so back. So he says, Sed's talked about you, of course. Told us all about playing against you last year. I said to him, said that'll be something to tell your grandchildren. That will. You beat Harry Potter. Harry doesn't say anything. Fred and George are scowling. It's like they want to take Cedric aside for a moment and say, explain to your friend.
Yes.
Harry fell off his broom, Dad. I told you. It was an accident. Yes, but you didn't fall off. Did you, son?
No, because his parents are alive.
Always modest, Our said. Notice the value being supported here. Always modest. Same can't be said for Amos. Right? But the best man won. I'm sure Harry'd say the same, wouldn't you, eh? One falls off his broom, one stays on. Don't need to be a genius to tell which one's the better flyer. Mr. Weasley's like, time to go. Okay. What does Rowling do, however, within the next few chapters? What does she actually show us? In the voice of Ludo Bagman. Great Scott, he can fly. Are you watching this, Mr. Crumb? Okay. What's that meant to tell us? Which we already know, Harry can fly. I mean, what's his first experience on a broom? Damn, I'm good. I was born for this. Okay? So it's not that there's ever any doubt, but notice what Harry doesn't do in this scene. He doesn't contradict him. He doesn't stand up for himself. Where in the novels does Harry stand up for himself? Does he defend his honor? But that's not his honor. That's his father's. Okay? Yeah, it's only if the honor that is being besmirched is somehow tangentially related to Harry's. I don't think there that it's himself. He's somebody else. People will say bad things about Harry. You know, when he and Malfoy go at it, when Hermione gets her teeth grown, why does Harry go after Malfoy there? Because he's offended Hermione again. Okay? He defends himself physically with his wand when? Okay. When he's physically in danger. I mean, if Malfoy's shooting a curse at him, Harry does the same. If Voldemort's shooting a curse at him, Harry does the same. If Malfoy Sr.'s shooting a curse at him, Harry does the same. Notice the distinction Rowling draws between Harry, books 1 through 7, and James, in terms of what we learn about James in 5 and 6, and 7 to an extent. What would James do? Probably in this scene.
No, I'm the best.
Your son's a piss poor flyer, and let me prove it right now. And he would, pull out his stupid golden snitch and throw it and catch it, and throw it and catch it, and throw it and get on his broom. and then fly. Why? Because he has a need to prove himself. Harry has a thirst to prove himself, but he proves it how? Not by showing off. All those times, that he defends himself and defeats Voldemort. Where is Voldemort? How many spectators are there? Philosopher's Stone. Spectators. Zip. Chamber of Secrets. Zip. Prisoner of Azkaban. Hermione's passed out. It's just Harry. And he sees himself. So he kind of, way to go, Harry. Okay. This one, Death Eaters. But they're not going to walk around, wow, that Harry Potter. He really pulled a fast one on the Dark Lord. Sorry. Okay. Book 5, DA. But why? Because he has to. And the members of the Order of the Phoenix once they show up. Okay. But even there, the only person who sees Harry, quote unquote, take on the Dark Lord, Dumbledore. Nobody else is in that scene. Okay. Book 6. Who sees Harry take on Snape? Sorry, not taking on Snape. Sorry, I'm thinking book 7. Okay. Book 6. Nobody. I mean, Dumbledore's there. We'll talk about the scene with Dumbledore in the tower versus the film. Okay. Book 7. Everybody. Everybody. Why? We'll talk about that when we get there. Okay. But there's a reason why at that point. So, they go to the Quidditch World Cup, which we're not going to spend much time on, because the Quidditch World Cup itself, the actual match, is unimportant. Okay? It's whom Harry meets there in terms of Winky, okay? What happens to his wand, and then what happens with the Death Eaters after the World Cup. I'm trying to get to the right place. We see Ludo Bagman trying to help Harry, let's say. We hear Winky talk about Dobby's getting, thoughts above his station and such. We see the Malfoys come in with Fudge. And we get one of my favorite descriptions in the entire book. Where is that? Harry and Draco Malfoy had been enemies ever since their very first journey to Hogwarts. The pale boy with a pointed face and white blonde hair, Draco greatly resembled his father. His mother was blonde too, tall and slim. She would have been nice looking if she hadn't been wearing a look that suggested there was a nasty smell under her nose. So what does Narcissa seemingly look like wherever she goes? Her face is kind of... Okay? Which Harry's going to make reference to later to Draco. When Draco offends, and notice when Harry does that. It's when Draco offends Mrs. Weasley. Harry's coming to Mrs. Weasley's defense there. Okay? So, let's go on to after the Quidditch World Cup. Turn more quickly. And we see the Dark Mark chapter. Crowd of wizards, tightly packed, moving together with wands pointing straight upward, was marching slowly across the field. Harry squinted at them. They didn't seem to have faces. Then he realized that their heads were hooded and their faces masked. High above them, floating along in midair, 4 struggling figures were being contorted into grotesque shapes. It was as though the masked wizards on the ground were puppeteers and the people above them were marionettes operated by invisible strings that rose from the wands into the air. 2 of the figures were very small. More wizards were joining the marching group, laughing, pointing up at the floating bodies. Tents crumpled and fell, as the marching crowd swelled. In other words, they're just marching right over the tents. Once or twice, Harry saw one of the marchers blast a tent out of his way. The floating people were suddenly illuminated as they passed over a burning tent. Harry recognized one of them, Mr. Roberts. The other, he realizes, Mrs. Roberts and their children. One of the marchers below flipped Mrs. Roberts upside down with the wand. Foreshadowing. Her nightdress fell down to reveal voluminous drawers, and she struggled to cover herself up as the crowd below her screeched and hooted with glee. I'm trying to see what my mark here. Okay. My note says SUAYU Blook 6. I have no idea what that means. I think it means C Book 6. Okay? So what are the Death Eaters doing? Why are they doing this? Okay, because they can. Why else? What are they physically doing as they're walking around with their wands pointing up? We're described what they're physically doing. They're laughing. Okay, they're having fun. This is fun for them. Okay? So, Harry, Ron, Hermione run into Malfoy. Malfoy kind of warns Hermione, you might be next. They go into the clearing. We're going to skip all the stuff with the dark mark. Okay. And notice just before all these ministry wizards stupefy them, Harry hears, we see them apparate. And without pausing to think, Harry yells, duck! And he pulls Ron and Hermione down. Notice, he seized the other two and pulled them down onto the ground, stupefied. Kind of interesting to think, where do all those stupefied curses go? Okay. You have Harry, Ron, and Hermione, like this. And you got like 20 wizards around them. They duck. Circular firing squad. So I don't think we're ever told that any of them are stunned. Right?
They probably almost beat each other.
Yeah, if they're all really good shots, So, we discover Harry didn't conjure the dark mark. They find Winky. They do the Innerati spell. Okay. See the Morse Mordor come out of Harry's wand. And who takes great offense at what Amos Diggory suggests? Barty Crouch. What does Barty Crouch say about himself and Harry? Two people least likely to conjure the dark mark. Where are we in terms of our understanding of Barty Crouch at this point? We don't know anything about him, other than that Percy worships the ground he walks on. Okay? That's all we know. We come to learn from Arthur later on a little bit more about Barty Crouch Sr. And as they're talking, Hermione says, the dark mark hasn't been seen. Mr. Weasley says the dark mark hasn't been seen for 13 years. In other words, since Harry was a little over a year old. Okay, which is just before Voldemort went into hiding, so to speak. Ron, I don't get it. That is a big deal. It's a shape in the sky. Ron, you know who and his followers sent the dark mark into the air whenever they killed. Why wouldn't Ron already know that? I mean, I know Ron doesn't read like Harry doesn't read. But Ron's born into a wizard family. Would they not talk about that? Mr. and Mrs. Weasley wouldn't. Why not?
Because they want a safe environment for them to grow up in. No worries. Protecting them.
What kind of safe environment, though? Is this an ignorance is bliss safe environment? Now, think about what the phrase really means. I don't think this is an ignorance is bliss. I think this is we don't want them to know what's out there. This is more of a ministry of magic, kind of. We don't want them to know what's out there. What's one of the purposes of fairy tales? Think Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel. To teach caution. What else? Are there wolves? Oh, yes. Are there monsters? Are there, unfortunately, yes, women who want to eat you? And men, think Jeffrey Dahmer. Yes, there are. Are there ogres? Literal ogres? No, there are not. Are there metaphorical ogres? All over the place. We saw one in Nice. We've seen them in Baton Rouge. We've seen them in Dallas. We've seen them just yesterday. Police chief in Kansas City was murdered. Okay. 16th cop in 17 days, I think it is. Right? They're all over. Fairy tales are kind of ways of preparing children and adults for what is really out there. So, Ron doesn't quite understand that. The terror it inspired, Mr. Weasley says, you have no idea. You're too young. That's the first time I think we've heard that phrase. You're too young. 14 years old is too young to understand terror. Really?
He is too young to have been around the last time Voldemort was in power. So he is too young to...
Okay, he's too young to have personally experienced what it was like. He's not too young for a family to talk about what the real world is like. Okay.
But a 14-year-old right now was born after 9/11.
Should they know?
Yeah.
They know age, but they won't know the fear that went through everyone's head when it happened, or the fear to go flying again, or the fear when all that happened, not knowing where people were, what they were doing, because all the cell lines were down. Communication was, well, only cell lines, it was just telephone.
Most of you were born after the first World Trade Center bombing. Some of you may not even know there had been a first World Trade Center bombing in 1993. You're all born long after the end of the Cold War. I remember from the age of 5 duck and cover drills because I lived near NASA. I lived near Moffett Field, which is where the U-2 spy planes flew in and out of. Near 10 miles as a crow flies. So if there had been a quote-unquote nuclear attack, we'd have been vaporized, immediately. Okay? Those were real fears in the 60s and 70s. Okay? 9/11 instituted a new kind of fear, and what has been going on since. How do you prepare yourself for a crazy getting in a semi-truck? How do you prepare yourself for a crazy hopping on a train with an axe? Happened in Germany last weekend. Guy axed 20 people. None of them died, I don't believe. Okay. Constant vigilance. Okay. And a 22 hip holster. So, you have no idea. You're too young. But what Mr. Weasley means is not you're too young to have experienced it. He means you're too young to understand. Really? Draco Malfoy. That's all you need. Draco Malfoy is the pint-sized version of the big-sized version. Wherever there are bullies, and there are bullies where? From 5 years old and on. Okay? Everyone's worst fear. So Harry asks, what are Death Eaters? It's what you-know-who supporters called themselves. Okay? Ron talks about meeting Draco Malfoy in the woods and said, his father was probably out there. Harry, but what were Voldemort's... He said the word. Sorry. What were they doing? I mean, what's the point? Mr. Weasley, the point? Harry, that's their idea of fun. When you-know-who was in power, half the Muggle killings were done for fun. So what is he saying about Death Eaters? Doesn't have to make sense. In other words, unlike, the Islamist wackos, who, in a twisted way, you can say, at least their killings have a point. Very twisted logic here. The point is, I kill them, I die, I go to paradise. With either my 72 virgins or 72 raisins, depends on the translation. Yeah, literally. Literally, okay? We won't go there. If you're into raisins, I guess that's what you want. Okay? But at least there's a point. Here, it's just sheer fun. It's the sheer meanness of it. Okay?
Guys, if you keep meaning to bring this up. We are less, where we're staying, we are less than half a mile from the Imperial War Museum. There's a Holocaust exhibit in the Imperial War Museum. The museum is free to get into. You should go down there. The Holocaust exhibit is not going to be fun by any stretch of the imagination. But some of the narratives that are just playing on loops. The one survivor talking about after the law was passed, that Jewish citizens had to get out of the way Nazi soldiers if they were walking in the street. And when she was a child, she stepped out of the way of one of the soldiers and her friend didn't. And he just pulled out his pistol and shot her right there on the sidewalk and kept walking. That's the Death Eater mentality. Muggles are inferior. They are less than wizards. And you're already starting to see vestiges of this.
If you saw the throne at the studio tour, the throne's all wrong. If you're familiar with the throne in the books. Because what does the throne in the books look like? It's not built like this, where you have a pediment, and then you have a bunch of people, and then you have a seat on top with arms and a back. The entire thing is people. Human people. I think she has in mind for this the images of the bodies just thrown into the graves at the death camps. Okay. And what's the motto? Magic is might. What's the motto? Might makes right. That's what that means. If you have the power, you have the right. Okay? So, their form of laughs, their form of fun. Ron, but if they were the Death Eaters, why'd they disapparate when they saw the Dark Mark? Bill, use your brains, Ron. Notice it's not just Mr. Weasley doing the teaching here. If they really were Death Eaters, they worked very hard to keep out of Azkaban. You know who lost power? Told all sorts of lies about forcing them to kill. I bet they'd be even more frightened than the rest of us. In other words, if they really were Death Eaters, they were traitors. So you think the real Death Eaters are going to be all that pleased to meet them? Well, what do we see with Barty Crouch Jr. when we finally get to see him unmasked? Told you. Don't like Death Eaters who went free. He paid his price. Okay? Which is why he wants to have a talk with Snape and Karkaroff and the others. So we get mayhem at the Ministry. Why is there mayhem? Okay, because the Dark Mark was seen. Why else? Put it this way. What does Percy say? What's the cause of the mayhem? Dad, who spoke too soon, who didn't get clearance of his head of... Who is Arthur Weasley's head of office? Yeah. How many people work in Arthur's office? Arthur and the other guy, Perkins, somebody or other. And we're never even actually told that Arthur is in charge of the. It's because nobody wants the job. It's a completely useless, seemingly office. Okay. When Percy suggests that, man, Molly comes down on him like a ton of bricks. Don't you talk about that way like your father. What are we being shown? What is Percy willing to do? Chuck the family under the bus. Okay. We get the description of the Weasleys' clock. And we hear about Mad-Eye Moody. We go on Hogwarts Express. Stop me or say something if you want to, because I'm skipping the stuff about Durmstrang, jumping up to the Triwizard Tournament. So we hear about the Triwizard Tournament. Sorting Hat sings a new song, but it's essentially the same song as we've heard before. But let's look again, just real briefly, what we're told are the qualities. The Sorting Hat says each of the four founders valued different virtues in the ones they had to teach. Gryffindor, the bravest, were prized far beyond the rest. That is, bravery is the ultimate virtue that Gryffindor prizes. For Ravenclaw, clever mind. For Hufflepuff, hard workers. The AC has seemed to stop working entirely. And power-hungry Slytherin, great ambition. Notice that in this description, 3 of the houses don't receive modifiers. Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff. But then the Sorting Hat kind of describes Slytherin. Power-hungry. Ambition. All right? We see people sorted. And I'm going to go on. We get introduced to Mad-Eye Moody, and we hear about the Triwizard Tournament. Skipping a bunch again. Go on to the first lesson with Mad-Eye. Doesn't occur in the classroom. Where does it, this is Mad-Eye Moody. Where does this lesson occur? Malfoy runs into Harry, Ron, Hermione, and he tells Ron, your dad's in the paper. Daily Prophet. Arnold Weasley. Imagine them not even getting his name right, Weasley, says Malfoy. It's almost as though he's a complete non-entity, isn't it? Malfoy straightened the paper with a flourish and reads on. And there's a picture, Weasley, a picture of your parents outside their house. If you can call it a house. Your mother could do with losing a bit of weight, couldn't she? Ron shaking with fury. Harry, get stuffed, Malfoy. Come on, Ron. Oh, yeah, you were staying with them this summer, weren't you, Potter? So tell me, is his mother really that porky, or is it just the picture? You know your mother, Malfoy? That expression she's got, like she's got dung under her nose? Has she always looked like that? Or is it just because you were with her? Malfoy's face goes slightly pink. Don't you dare insult my mother. Keep your fat mouth shut then. And Harry turns his back to him. Okay. Bang! Several people scream. Harry feels something graze the side of his face. Oh, no, you don't, laddie. Harry spins around. There's Moody, limping down the staircase, wand out, pointing at a pure white ferret, shivering on the floor. Nobody but Moody, moving a muscle. Did he get you? Moody growls. Harry, no. Missed. Leave it. Harry, not you. And he turns and looks at Crabbe, who is just about to pick up the white ferret. Moody starts to limp. I don't think so, as the ferret starts to scurry away. He does his wand like this, and the ferret flies up. I don't know if you've seen live ferrets. We've had ferrets as pets. You put a ferret 10 feet up in the ground and let it drop, it's a dead ferret. And they're very fragile. I don't think so. I don't like people who attack when their opponent's back's turned. Up in the air again. Stinking, cowardly, scummy thing to do. Okay? Never do that again. Professor Moody. McGonagall shows up. Hello, Professor McGonagall. What are you doing? Teaching. Teaching. Not in the classroom, but he's still teaching. Moody, is that a student? Yep. No! We never use transfiguration as a punishment. Surely Professor Dumbledore mentioned that. Yeah, he might have mentioned it, yeah. I thought a good sharp shock. What's Moody's idea of teaching? Theoretical? Practical. Hands-on. Or ground-on, you know. We give detentions, Moody, and speak to the defendant's head of house. I'll do that then. And he goes up to Malfoy. And Malfoy mutters, my father. Oh, yeah? Well, I know your father of old, boy. You tell him Moody's keeping a close eye on his son. You tell him that from me. Now you have else to be Snape, will it? Yes, another old friend. Imagine what everybody is thinking hearing that. Or at least Harry, Ron, and Hermione, because what do they know about Moody? Former Auror. What kind of former Auror? Like head G-Man. I mean, the greatest Auror who ever lived. And he's saying, I know Snape. I've been looking forward to a chat with old Snape. Come on, you. And he takes Malfoy by the arm. And Ron's like, shh, just hold that moment in my mind forever. Okay? So, they go off to Moody's Defense Against the Dark Arts class. And notice he's going to teach them curses. He says straight into it, curses. They come in many strengths and forms. He says, I'm supposed to teach you counter curses and leave it at that. I'm not supposed to show you what illegal dark curses look like till the 6th year. You're not supposed to be old enough to deal with it till then. But Professor Dumbledore's got a higher opinion of your nerves. He reckons you can cope. And I say, the sooner you know what you're up against, the better. Compare that with Arthur Weasley. You're not old enough to understand. Dumbledore? Yes, you are. In fact, not only are you old enough to understand, you're old enough to see what illegal dark curses look like. A wizard who's about to put an illegal curse on you isn't going to tell you what he's about to do. He's not going to do it nice and polite to your face. Somebody who's going to stab you on the train isn't going to come up and say, sorry, old boy, but I'm going to... Somebody's going to run you over with a car, blow you up with a bomb, isn't going to warn you. Okay? Rowling is saying, you need to be prepared. You need to be alert and watchful. You need to put that away, Miss Brown. You know, she's got her cell phone out, essentially, looking at her horoscope. So, he says, what are the most heavily punished curses? Ron. Imperious? Your father would know that one. Gave the ministry a lot of trouble. The Imperious curse. So, he pulls out a spider. Ron backs up. Puts the spider in the Imperious curse, and what's it do? Starts to tap dance. Everybody bursts into laughter. It's pretty funny seeing a spider tap dance. Think it's funny, do you? You'd like it, would you, if I did it to you? Dead silence. Total control. Okay, what does the Imperious curse do? What's it take away from you? Your free will, your free choice. All right? So he says what he could do if he put some of the students on. But he says it can be taught, it can be fought. He says, I'll teach you how, but it takes real strength of character. And not everyone's got it. Constant vigilance. So, another one. Neville, Cruciatus curse. Your name's Longbow. Neville nods. This part, I mean, when you think about it, what we discover later on and everything, we discover who Mad Eye Moody is. I mean, this is especially cruel on Rowling's part. Okay? In terms of putting Neville through this at the hands of the man who put his parents through it. I mean, Neville threw it in the sense of he's watching us. So, he says, pulls out the spider, needs to be a bit bigger. So the spider that was maybe this size is now like the size of a hand, so everybody can see it. Crucio, what does a spider do? Curls over on its back and just twitches. And notice, it doesn't stop. It just keeps twitching until Hermione says, stop it! Why? Because she's concerned about the poor spider? No. Because Neville's sitting there with his hands on the desk. And his knuckles are white. We don't know why. Other than maybe Neville's fearful of it happening to him. Pain. You don't need thumb screws or knives to torture someone if you can perform the Cruciatus curse. And what's the nice thing about the Cruciatus curse? No marks. Okay? All right. Anyone know any others? Hermione's thinking, uh-oh. Right, the killing curse. Puts his hand in the jar, pulls out the spider. The spider kind of runs away like, no, not me, him. Avada Kedavra. Flash a blinding green light. Why? Why is the light always green? Why is green the color of envy? And what? A rushing sound, as though a vast invisible something was soaring through the air. What is that vast invisible something? It could be one of two things. It could be life being sucked away, or it could be death coming. Either way, spider's dead. Not nice. Not pleasant. And there's no counter curse. No blocking it. Only one known person has ever survived it. He sat right in front of me. All eyes on Harry now. Harry's like, great, thank you very much. Okay? So that's how my parents died. Flash of green light. Harry remembers the flash of green light. He's seen it in his dreams. Okay? So, no counter curse. He says, why am I showing you? If there's nothing you can do, why am I showing you? Wouldn't it be better to just roll over and die? Because you've got to know, you've got to appreciate what the worst is. Why? Go back to book 1. Mars is bright tonight. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you're facing it. So what does he mean? Don't put yourself in situations where you might face this. Don't put yourself in situations where you're all alone in London at midnight on a dark, dodgy street. We have had girls attacked on the summer program before. Okay? Because they've been out by themselves. Actually, because they've been out with a group and then the group ditched them. Okay? Constant vigilance. So, use of any one of these, he says, you get a sentence in Azkaban. So, start taking this down. So they leave. Then they're like, man, serious stuff. Skip a bunch again. Hermione starts spew. Because what did she learn about the house elves? Or what did she learn, about Hogwarts?
So, do everything.
So she starts spew. perfect acronym. Harry gets a letter from Sirius, and what does Sirius tell him? This is my getting back to Mars is bright tonight. They're saying Dumbledore's got Mad Eye out of retirement, which means he's reading the signs, even if no one else is. What does that mean about Sirius? He sees the signs. So Sirius sees the signs, Dumbledore sees the signs, Mad Eye sees the signs, even if everybody else is clueless. Okay? What are the signs?
Strange disappearances.
Dark Mark? That's a pretty big one. Does Sirius know about Bertha Jorkins being missing? No, he doesn't. Not at this point. Okay? Does Sirius know about Frank Bryce? No, he doesn't. Dumbledore does. Notice what that means about Dumbledore. He reads the Muggle press. He watches Muggle news somehow. Okay? So, Beauxbaton and Durmstrang. What's it mean? Beautiful baton or wand, if you don't want to be all Frenchy. Okay? Beautiful wand, beautiful stick. Okay? Durmstrang comes from 19th century Sturm und Drang. Okay? Storm and stress. It was part of the Romantic movement in Germanic literature, which was you put people kind of in a pressure cooker environment. So you have a lot of atmospheric effects. Think in English literature or film, Wuthering Heights. It's a perfect example. You got Heathcliff and Catherine out there on the Scottish moors, etc., and there's storms and okay. It's emphasizing, kind of personal response to the stress of life. Does that describe the school? Okay, where would you rather go to school? With Karkaroff as headmaster or Dumbledore? Unless you're kind of twisted, but that's okay. So, they go back to Defense Against the Dark Arts, and Moody tells them, I'm going to put you under the Imperius Curse. Hermione, but you said it's illegal and you can't do that, Professor. It's against the law. Leave. Dumbledore wants you taught what it feels like. If you'd rather learn the hard way when someone's putting on you so they can control you, fine by me, your excuse, off you go. And she's like, no, I'm going to watch, if nothing else. So, he puts a few people. We see Dean Thomas hop around the room. Lavender Brown imitates a squirrel. Neville performs a series of gymnastics that he wouldn't do in normal life. Potter, you next. He puts Harry under. It was the most wonderful feeling Harry felt. A floating sensation. Harry felt a floating sensation as every thought and worry in his head was wiped gently away, leaving nothing but a vague, untraceable happiness. Remember the first day of class when I mentioned this? Apatheia? Having no cares, okay, being passionless, having no desires. What do cares, passions, and desires come from? A sense of self. What has just happened? Harry has no sense of self. Okay? That's what the Imperius Curse does. He stood there feeling immensely relaxed, only dimly aware of everyone watching him. Then he hears Mad Eye's voice jump onto the desk. He bends his knees obediently. Everybody's thinking he's going to do it. Why, though? Something in the back of his head. Why? Stupid thing to do, really. Jumping on a desk. Jump on it. No, I don't think I will, thanks, said the other voice a little more firmly. No, I don't really want to. Next thing Harry felt was considerable pain. He kind of jumped, but didn't jump. So he smacked his shins against the desk. Now that's more like it. Look at that, you lot. Potter foot. He fought it and he damn near beat it. Okay? Try that again, Potter. So how many times does he put Harry under? 4 times, and what does Harry do by the 4th time? Okay? Thoroughly repels it. What does that mean Harry has? Strength of character. Notice, nobody else in the class does it. Okay? So Harry has strength of character. How do you get that? I mean, you could use pretty much one word. 2 of those. You overcome adversity. And this is one of the things I really liked about several of your reaction papers to the first field trip. Several of you wrote about this idea of resilience. You looked at the Tower of London, you did a little bit of research, you found out how many houses burned, and you said, look at what these Londoners do. The city burns to the ground, they don't move. They don't rebuild London somewhere else. They rebuild it right here. Look at what happens during the Blitz. Okay? The Blitz isn't a blitzkrieg. A blitzkrieg is literally lightning fast war, where you cover many miles in a single charge in a single day. The Blitz was the bombing of London, okay, in 4041. Resilience, this idea of getting knocked down, getting back up, getting knocked down, getting back up, getting knocked down, getting back up. It's Captain America saying, I could do this all day. Before he's Captain America. When he's just puny old Steve Rogers there in the back of the alley, getting the snot beat out of him. Okay? What adversity does Harry overcome? Dursleys? What's part of that? Hunger? Does Harry ever fill his belly at the Dursleys? I think the implication is no. Is he ever happy at the Dursleys? Not really. Is he ever loved at the Dursleys? No. Those are all adversities. Is he ever dressed appropriately at the Dursleys? No. He is dressed. He doesn't go out into the cold with threadbare clothes. He doesn't go out in the cold naked. He has clothing. It's all just, like the size of an elephant's clothing on him. Okay? What else? What other adversity? Yeah, the Voldemort one. Dead parents, not knowing anything of his family. That is a form of adversity. Because he doesn't know anything about his family, he doesn't know who he is. Which is why we've said before, he's a seeker. He's seeking all that stuff. What other kind of adversity? What adversity does Ollivander lay on him? We must expect great things from you. He's an 11-year-old kid. He's just barely 11. Walk around town and look at 10-year-olds, 10 or 11-year-olds that you see, and imagine telling one, we must expect great things from you, and say, little boy, we must expect you to kind of be like Winston Churchill. Right! Or we must expect you to be like Stalin, or Hitler, or Pol Pot, or Mao, or whatever the Jong-il is currently in power. I get them all mixed up. Frank Jong-il, whatever you know. Okay? What other resilience? How about Snape? Malfoy? His own reputation? He has to overcome? Little things like Amos Diggory? It's like the entire deck is stacked against Harry. Every little thing is an opportunity for him to do what? Either fall down and give up, or get back up and dust himself off. Okay? So, we're running out of time. We see their transfiguration lesson. We hear about the Triwizard Tournament some more. I'm going to skip a bunch. Harry gets another letter from Sirius. Sirius says, nice try. I'm still coming. Don't do anything stupid. We get the Goblet of Fire. Fred and George try. Dumbledore impresses upon them. I wish to impress upon any of you wishing to complete that this tournament is not to be entered into lightly. Once a champion has been selected by the Goblet of Fire, he or she is obliged to see the tournament through to the end. Placing of your name in the goblet constitutes a binding magical contract. There can be no change of heart once you become a champion. Are we ever told what will happen if you do have a change of heart? Are you going to die? We know in the past, contestants in the Triwizard Tournament have died. But they've changed the rules so that that can't happen this time. Okay? So a bunch of people put their names in. Skipping a bunch. Hermione talks to Hagrid about the spew. Okay. The actual goblet. We're going to have to move a lot faster from there on out. The names come out. Who's first? Victor Crumb. Okay. Ron. No surprises there because there's kind of a bromance going there on Ron's part. That's what I said on Ron's part. Because Victor, he would not like Ron. Ron too skinny. The next one, Beauxbaton, and it's who? Fleur Delacour. What does her name mean? Flower of the heart. Okay, which Ron also has. So Ron's willing to. Sorry. Hogwarts, pretty boy, and Harry. Harry sat there aware that every head in the Great Hall had turned to look at him. He felt numb. He was surely dreaming. He had not heard correctly. No applause, a buzzing. Go on. He gets up. He goes through the door. And Fleur speaks to him. What is it? Do they want us back in the hall? Harry doesn't say anything. Bagman comes in, others come in, and says, may I introduce the fourth Triwizard champion? Triforce. I think the word means what you think it means. Okay? Evidently there's been a mistake, says Fleur. He cannot compete. He is too young. There it is again. Too young. Okay? So, Dumbledore comes in. We have Bagman come in. The rules are hashed out again. Snape's there. Why is Snape there? Okay, why is Snape there? Potter's fault. He did something. Right? Crouch says we must follow the rules. Rules state clearly those people whose names come out are bound. Okay? Madame Maxime says it's not fair. Hogwarts has 2 bites at the apple. Moody finally chimes in. If anyone's got reason to complain, it's Potter, but he's not saying a thing. Why isn't Harry saying anything? Shock. Fleur, again, she should learn to shut up. Why should he complain? He has the chance to compete, hasn't he? We've all been hoping to be chosen for weeks and weeks. The honor for our school is 1,000 galleons. What good is 1,000 galleons going to do for her? Is French wizarding money the same? In prize money, this is a chance many would die for. Maybe someone's hoping Potter is going to die for it. And they're all like, oh, great, here comes Mad Eye Moody again. Moody explains. The goblet is a powerful magical object. Somebody used an exceptionally strong Confundus charm. Okay? So he and Karkaroff go back and forth, and Moody kind of lets something a little bit slip about dark wizards and you, Karkaroff. Alistair! Dumbledore's like, well, heal. Okay? So, Harry has to. Cedric asks Harry, how'd you do it? Harry, I didn't. Does Cedric believe him? Nope. Does anybody believe Harry? Hermione does. Hagrid does. Dumbledore does. Okay? So, Harry goes up to the common room. Gryffindors are just having a party, all except for one. Ron. Oh, poor little Ron. Grow up, Ron. Be a man. Suck it up. Okay? Then we have the weighing of the wands. We meet Rita Skeeter. Does her last name suggest anything? Like a mosquito? Okay? She is a bud. Let's see here. Keep going on. We see the Malfoy with the stickers, the buttons. Support Cedric Diggory, the real Hogwarts champion. And then you touch it and it turns to Potter Stinks. Okay? Malfoy tries to hit Harry and hits Hermione instead with the Den's teeth Algio increase. Hermione runs off to the hospital ward to get her teeth shrunk. Skipping a bunch. Harry has his interview with Rita Skeeter. Ollivander shows up for the weighing of the wands. And Harry gets another letter from Sirius. Tells him when to meet with him. The expose of Harry comes out, which is all lies. And they go off to Hogsmeade. I'm trying to think of where to pick up. They run into Mad Eye. And Mad Eye sees Harry. Nice cloak, Pa. Harry stared at him in amazement. The large chunk missing from Moody's nose was particularly obvious at a few inches distance. Moody grinned. Y'all can see through invisibility cloaks. It's coming useful at times, I can tell you. Is there a problem there? It's supposed to be impenetrable. Impenetrable by any kinds of charm, spells, etc. Okay, Moody's not using a charm or spell. He's using whatever this magical eye is. We don't know what this thing is. Okay? But how good would a cloak of invisibility be if it's not invisible to everybody? And the way the cloak, the real cloak, notice how he says, yeah, it can see through invisibility cloaks. More than one. Moody has one himself, right? Okay. So is Harry's invisibility cloak special? Or could any invisibility cloak be one of the Deathly Hallows? How do you know which one descends from the Peverils? This is a writing issue that I'm simply getting at. It's something that's unclear to me. Maybe she's going to clear it all up in Pottermore, which is cheating, but so Moody can see him. Hagrid tells Harry to meet him at midnight. Harry's thinking, great, I'm supposed to meet Sirius also. Why does Hagrid want Harry to meet him? Cheating, that's why. He wants to cheat. So, Harry learns he's got to get past the dragon. He doesn't learn what he's got to get past the dragon. All he knows is the first task involves dragons. So he goes and he sees.
Could know, like if he was, because they say they wanted like mothers.
But Harry doesn't think about any of the tasks.
That's what makes me mad because he's so dumb.
So he sees Sirius, and he tells Sirius about the giants. He says, "Don't worry, we can deal with those in a minute." He says, "I need to warn you." Okay. Karkaroff, he says, he was a Death Eater. He was in Azkaban, but he got released. Did a deal with the Ministry. He says, also, I've been hearing some things, and I've been reading between the lines of that Skeeter Woman's article. Okay. He says, someone tried to stop Moody from getting the job at Hogwarts. Death Eaters are more active than usual. They showed themselves at the Quidditch World Cup. And did you hear about the Ministry of Magic witch who's gone missing, Harry? Bertha Jorkins? Yeah. She disappeared in Albania. That's definitely where Voldemort was rumored to be last. Why was Voldemort in Albania? Why Albania? Why not France? Why not Germany? Why not Bulgaria? Why not Sweden? Why not Italy? Why not Scotland? Why not Wales? Albania, of all places. I could be out on a limb here. I think it's this reason. I don't need to write anything up there. Albania, up until the end of the Cold War, kind of beginning 1988, but reaches its fruition in 1990. Albania was known as the most thoroughly, perfectly atheist country in the world. The Soviet Union was kind of against religion, but religion was actually written into the Constitution. You had freedom of worship under Lenin's Constitution. Kind of odd, okay? China has freedom of worship. Cuba has freedom. Even North Korea protected, so to speak, freedom of worship. Albania didn't. Albania was the only country in the world that outlawed all religion. Didn't matter whether it was theistic or pantheistic. Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Shintoism, worshiping your dead parents-ism. All outlawed. What's here is what's important. What's now is what's important. This is it. Okay? That's where Voldemort goes to live. Why? Because Voldemort, more than anything else, is afraid of what happens after death. Why? Because he believes there is something after death. He wants to be an atheist, but he can't be an atheist. I mean a real atheist. Okay? But there's something that just troubles him. That's why he flees from death so much. Okay? Sirius goes on. Turn page. So Harry's like, so Voldemort could find out something about the tournament? He says, I don't know. It's possible. Just, be prepared. He essentially tells Harry what? Constant vigilance. Okay? So we get the first task. What does Flitwick just happen to be teaching them in charms? Oxio. Has Harry been learning it? No. What does Harry always need in order to learn something? Hermione. Special helper. So, Harry goes up to Cedric. Okay. Makes Cedric kind of spill his books and then bends down to help him and says, dragons. They've got 4, 1 for each of us. We got to get past them. Are you sure? Dead sure. We're not supposed to know. Cedric, why are you telling me? What's the question kind of imply? And, man, I wouldn't tell you. Harry looked at him in disbelief. He was sure Cedric wouldn't have asked that if he had seen the dragon himself. It's fair, isn't it? We all know now we're on an even footing, aren't we? In other words, this'll be a fair match. Cedric's still looking at him slightly suspiciously. Moody comes around the corner. Come with me, Potter. Diggory, off you go. Don't worry. And Moody says, after he explains what all the secrecy, censures, and those things are, so, found out about the dragons, have you? He doesn't want to spill the beans on Hagrid. It's all right. Cheating's the traditional part of the tournament. Harry didn't cheat. I wasn't accusing you, laddie. I've been telling Dumbledore from the start. He can be as high-minded as he likes, but you can bet old Karkaroff and Maxime won't be. They'll have told their champions everything they can. Notice, the headmasters will have told the champions. Okay? They want to win. They want to beat Dumbledore. They'd like to prove he's only human. So, got any ideas how you're going to get past your dragon yet? No. I'm not going to tell you. Plenty of strengths. Harry. Just like Frodo in Lord of the Rings. I don't have any strengths. Gandalf says you got to use what strength, wits, and heart as you have. Frodo says, I don't have any of those. Okay? I don't have any. Excuse me, you got strengths if I say you've got them. What's you the best at? Harry's thinking. Well, if it's academic subjects, nothing. Quidditch, sports. That's right, you're a damn good flyer from what I've heard. Okay? What else? He tells him you're going to need a spell. But before he takes him to his office, what did he tell Harry as they arrived at the office? That was a very decent thing you just did, Paul. Why is this important? We're going to hear the real Barty Crouch Jr. tell us what this means at the end of the novel. He says that was a very decent thing you did. And at the end of the novel, what does he say about very decent people? They're easy to trick. They're gullible. Why? We hear this in Shakespeare, by the way. Shakespeare does this in King Lear. When the evil brother, Edmund, pulls a trick, essentially, on the good brother, Edgar. Why are they easy to trick? Because they believe the best of people. They think people are like they are. Good, honorable, true, just, loyal. Okay? So, Harry learns Accio. We see the Triwizard Tournament. How long does the Triwizard Tournament take in the book? Well, let's go back here. It's like 6 or 7 pages. How long is it in the film?
Maybe the first task.
Yeah, first task, sorry, not the whole tournament. More than 6 pages worth.
Yeah.
Okay. Where does the Triwizard, where does the first task occur in the book? Location. In the Quidditch pitch. Where does it occur in the film?
Yeah.
Castle, the lake, over the Forbidden Forest. I mean, they're flying off into towers. Right? And Harry defeats the Hungarian Horntail. Ron comes back to him. They make up and all that kind of stuff. We get more about the House Elf Liberation Front. Hold on, let me go back there for a second. What's that? Nope. Trying to skip a bunch. Bystander's Roots. Dobby tells Harry about Winky. They go off. They talk to Winky. We get the unexpected task, which I'm largely going to skip over, the Yule Ball. What's the importance of the Yule Ball? Is it actually, Hermione being a stunner? I mean, that is important. But, she gets her teeth actually fixed from where they were even before. No, it's when Harry and Ron ditch their dates, fools, and go out. Because how are Parvati and Padme described? They're lookers, man. Okay? They're drop dead gorgeous. And Harry and Ron are completely clueless. So they go out. Why is that scene when they go out important? What happens there? They overhear Hagrid talking to Madame Maxime. Okay. But they don't know it's Rita. Okay. What else? Well, other than seeing people in bushes. Snape, Karkaroff. Okay. We're going to skip a bunch again. Get my pages to turn fast enough. Yeah, I know. I almost brought books instead. Really slow. Sheesh. Man, that was slow. So, Cedric comes to Harry and says, I owe you one. You told me about the dragons. You know that golden egg? Harry, yeah? Is yours whale when you open it? Yeah. Take a bath. That's not quite the same as what Harry does. Okay. Take a bath. Use the prefect's bathroom. Take a bath with it. Okay? This is a guess on my part. I don't know that this is the inspiration for the eggs. Have any of you been to Churchill's war rooms? The cabinet war rooms? Okay. You need to go. Yeah, if you're not interested in World War II history, which, ended 50 years before you were born, so you're probably not at all. It is important. When I was first here in '95, they had Churchill's war rooms open, but it was small. And then when I first went there with my kids in, I think, '07, something like that, they had increased it. But by 2013, they had increased it to almost double its size. So it's now the Churchill War Rooms and Museum. So they have memorabilia of Winston Churchill's there. His first uniform and all this kind of stuff. Well, in part of the room, when you go in, it's about, how Churchill's day was organized during World War II when he was Prime Minister. And they talk about the Enigma machine. Right? The Enigma machine was what was used to decipher German code. Right? And the way they did this, if my memory is correct, is a code would be intercepted. It would be put through the Enigma machine, and the code would be deciphered. When the code would be deciphered, it was spat out in like ticker tape. Like you see in parades in New York and stuff. It would be spat out in this ticker tape, and that ticker tape would be put in something. That something would then be brought to Churchill. It's a golden egg, folks. It literally looks like a golden egg. It almost looks identical to the egg that they have at the Harry Potter Studio Tour, except it doesn't have the drawings and the runes on it. Okay? Churchill would then open it. So his would be the only eyes to see it, and it would be up to him to determine who else learns. I mean, he would bring in his lieutenants, etc., and pass the word along. Do you remember, do I essentially have that all correct? Have you seen that? Okay. I think the egg part was known in the 90s. It wasn't visible. It wasn't on display until, I don't think, 2012. But I'm pretty sure I've read about that in histories. Okay? And I'm wondering if Rowling got the idea of the egg as being the source of the clue for the second task from that. Okay? We then get Rita Skeeter's next scoop. And we hear what she writes about Hagrid. How does Hagrid take the scoop? How does he take the article? Not well. How not well? He quits. He tells Dumbledore he resigns. Okay? Harry, Ron, and Hermione come back from Hogsmeade, where they've run into Rita Skeeter, and Hermione kind of lets her have it. Harry says, who cares if he's half giant? There's nothing wrong with him. Hermione says, you horrible woman, you don't care, do you? Anything for a story. Anyone will do, won't they? Even Ludo Bagman. Sit down, you silly little girl. I know things about Ludo Bagman that would make your hair curl. Do we ever hear these things? I see heads nodding no, and I see heads nodding yes. What do we hear about Ludo Bagman? He was on trial. Was he convicted? Was he actually guilty? I'm not talking about legality. Was he convicted? I mean, did he actually do what he was charged of doing? Well, there's some ambiguity here. What?
The only reason he didn't get convicted is because he had fans.
Is that the only reason?
Well, he says he doesn't know what he's doing. He didn't realize he was a family friend.
Yeah, he says, the guy was an old friend of the family's. Does Dumbledore suspect Bagman? Do we get any indication that Dumbledore suspects Bagman was a Death Eater? No. Do you think Dumbledore could have swayed the Wisengamot?
Yeah.
What is one of Dumbledore's little things on the chocolate frog card? Chief Mugwump, I believe it is. What does that mean? He's like the Supreme Court Justice. Okay. Barty Crouch in that scene in the trial, Barty Crouch Sr. is the prosecutor. He's not the judge. It's everybody around who are essentially the judges. Seems to me, if Dumbledore thought Ludo Bagman deserved a trip to Azkaban, Ludo Bagman would take a trip to Azkaban. Barty Crouch Jr. deserved what he got. Bellatrix, Rudolphus deserved what they got. Barty Crouch is just an idiot. Ludo Bagman is just an idiot. He is, to use the parlance that I will claim for myself when I was one, just a dumb jock. That's it. He wouldn't know a plot from a meringue. Okay? So, when we hear Rita Skeeter say this, what is she talking about? Innuendo. What is everything she write based upon? Rumors, innuendo, half-truths, and lies. Okay? Why? What kind of perspective is J.K. Rowling actually it starts kind of in the third book. What kind of perspective does she start creating of the press, the media? Unreliable and biased. Why? How did it treat her? Not good. Okay? It just fanned the flames of the wacko Christians coming out of the woodwork. okay, in the United States. So they leave Hogsmeade after talking with Rita. They go back to school. They go down to Hagrid's hut. Dumbledore's there. Okay. Lets them in. And Harry says, of course we still want to know you. You don't think anything that skeeter was cow. Sorry, Professor, he says to Dumbledore. I've gone temporarily deaf and haven't any idea what you said, Harry. All right. How could you think we'd care what that woman wrote? Notice Harry stops her to say, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And yet when he doesn't call Snape Professor Snape, he never stops himself. Sorry, Professor. Dumbledore always corrects him. Okay. So what's this mean? She is a cow. She deserves what she's called. So, Dumbledore says, living proof of what I've been telling you, Hagrid. I have shown you the letters from the countless parents who remember you from their own days here, telling me in no uncertain terms that if I sacked you, they would have something to say about it. Not all of them. Really, Hagrid, if you're holding out for universal popularity, I'm afraid you'll be in this cabin for a very long time. Not a week has passed since I became headmaster of the school when I haven't had at least one owl complaining about the way I run it. But what should I do? Barricade myself in my study? You're not half giant. Hagrid, Harry says, look what I've got for relatives. In other words, really, can your mom be worse than Vernon Dursley? An excellent point. Dumbledore, my own brother, Aberforth, was prosecuted for practicing inappropriate charms on a goat. Notice, he doesn't say illegal charms. Inappropriate implies Aberforth's a little out there, let's just say. Okay? It was all over the papers, but did Aberforth hide? No, he did not. Held his head high, went about his business as usual. Of course, I'm not entirely sure he can read, but, you know, what is his business as usual? Running a pub. Okay? I refuse to accept your resignation. I expect you back at work Monday. You'll join me for breakfast at 8:30 in the Great Hall. Okay? So, Hagrid says, talking about Dumbledore, he's right, of course. You're all right. Been stupid. My old dad would have been ashamed of the way I've been behaving. Never shown you a picture of my old dad, have I? And he shows him a picture, and, you know, Dad's like this, and Hagrid's like that. Just after he got into Hogwarts, etc., Dumbledore was the one who stuck up for me after Dad died. Got me the gamekeeper job. Trusts people, he does. Gives them second chances. That's what sets him apart from other heads, see? He'll accept anyone at Hogwarts so long as they've got the talent. That is, as long as they're magical. Knows people can turn out okay even if their families weren't, well, all that respectable. Back to book 2. Hagrid is completely contradicting himself. Rotten to the core, no Malfoy's worth it, bad blood. There's some who'd always hold it against you. There's some who'd even pretend they just had big bones, Madam Maxine. I am what I am, and I'm not ashamed. Never be ashamed, old Dad used to say. There's some who hold it against you, but they're not worth bothering with. And he was right. I've been an idiot. I'm not bothering with her no more. They're kind of like, Hagrid, really, please, just stop right now. TMI. Okay? And he tells Harry, you know what, Harry, when I first met you, you reminded me of me a bit. Mom and Dad gone, you was feeling like you wouldn't fit in Hogwarts. Not sure you really are. Now look at you, Harry. School champion. You know what I'd love? I'd love you to win. I really would. It'd show them all. You don't have to be pure blood to do it. You don't have to be ashamed of what you are. It'd show them Dumbledore's the one who's got it right. Letting anyone in as long as they can do magic. How you doing with that egg, Harry? Like, need a few clues? Okay. So what's he mean? Dumbledore's the one who's got it right. Doesn't matter how much magical blood you have. If you can make that pen move Without touching it, you're in. That's what's important. Okay? Okay, the egg in the eye. Harry figures out what the egg says, how it works. We're going to skip a bunch. We are running out of time. The second, why is Harry stupid on the second task? Tries to save everybody.
He thinks Dumbledore's gonna let everyone drown. They're not safe.
What are we told at the beginning? No one dies. No one dies. Okay? But Harry sticks around. He's got Ron. He sticks around, waits for who to come get Hermione? Vicky. Okay. The other Vicky, we'll say, since we have a Vicky in here. The other Vicky. Who's going to come get Gabrielle? Not Fleur, because Fleur's a flake. Why does Fleur get chosen?
Impressive out of their school.
Hot factor, maybe. You know. She is a Vila.
Yeah, maybe it's. Or did she walk past the dragon?
She is a Vila. Yeah, she did.
She's kind of dumb.
No, I'm not saying she's dumb. I just won't say anything more.
She becomes a first breaker, though.
Okay, so they meet. Come to it. They meet Sirius in Hogsmeade after the second task. Come on, Dave. Notice Harry gets extra marks because he shows what? Moral fiber. Because he wants to save them all. Foreshadowing? Patronus Potter? Chapter 27, Padfoot returns. We get Rita Skeeter's next scoop, where we find out Harry is madly in love with Hermione. We see Harry over here, Snape and Karkaroff. And they finally meet Sirius, and Hermione tells him that Crouch sacked Winky. They talk about Winky, and Ludo Bagman. Trying to see where I want to pick up. Hermione says again that Crouch sacked Bagman. Hermione sacked Winky. And Ron says, Hermione, will you give it a rest with Elf? Sirius. No, she's got the measure of Crouch better than you have, Ron. Important little statement here by Sirius. If you want to know what a man's like, take a good look at how he treats his inferiors, not his equals. How does Barty Crouch Sr. treat his inferiors? Does he know Percy's name? Okay. I still don't have all your names. How long has Percy been working for Barty Crouch Sr.? At this point now, it's over 6 months. He's working for him when Harry goes to live with them in June, I think it is. Might be early July. Okay. And we're in March. So we're at like 8 months. And he still doesn't know his name. Okay? So, if you want to know what a man's like, take a good look at how he treats his inferiors. How does Dumbledore treat his inferiors? Same way he treats everyone, like they're almost better than him. How does Draco treat his inferiors? Like they're inferior. How does Narcissa treat inferiors? Under her nose. How does Ron treat his inferiors? Not so well. How does Harry treat his inferiors? Use Dobby as an example. As an equal. As an equal. How does Sirius treat his inferiors? It depends, doesn't it?
At least they're not creatures.
Snakes are not creatures.
But creature.
Yeah, that's
Creature's different. Why? Because creature reminds him of his home. Okay? That's why Dumbledore explains.
So he doesn't, yeah, he said he doesn't hate creature.
Dumbledore explains he doesn't hate creature. He hates what creature symbolizes. Okay? Doesn't make it okay. Dumbledore makes it clear it doesn't make it okay.
Creature's sort of a dick, too.
Yeah.
He's the
That's still
worst
part of how
guy.
you treat. I mean,
Yeah, but
But
when
why?
he's nice to creature, he's like he has like soup waiting for them. Like he takes their coats.
Yeah. Yeah,
Creature
I'm not
is,
serious.
as Dumbledore says, creature is what the blacks made him into. Dobby is what, finish the sentence, Harry makes him into. Would Dobby be the way Dobby is if Harry hadn't, take a seat on my bed, and if Harry hadn't given him the sock? No. Winky is the way he is because of how the Crouches treated him. Her, sorry. So what is Rowling suggesting? It's kind of what I was getting at the end of class the other day. Every interaction does what? Builds or destroys. Okay? Describe every interaction of Sirius with creature. It destroyed. Why? Because creature was a reminder of Sirius's destruction at his parents' hands, and his siblings' hands. The family is entirely, though Regulus does turn, notice, the family is entirely bad. They're evil. Not evil in the sense that they are Death Eaters. They're not Death Eaters. Well, other than Regulus. But Regulus does change again. And that's an important little detail. It goes to show people can change. So, they keep talking. And he says, Crouch's absences, these are weird. Something strange is going on. So, Harry, you know Crouch then? Oh, I know Crouch all right. He threw me in Azkaban without a trial. Here's that conflicting nature of wizarding justice again, or injustice. And so he tells us he was going to be the next Minister of Magic. Until what? Until his son was kind of Satan Jr. Okay? But you wouldn't understand, you're too young. That's what my dad said at the World Cup. I said, Ron, try us, why don't you? A grin flashes across Sirius's face. Why? Ah, kid's after my own heart.
Yeah.
He's thinking, well, it's not quite 4, but it's pretty close. You guys are like the 4 us were. All right, I'll try you. Imagine Voldemort's powerful now. You don't know who his supporters are. You don't know who's working for him and who isn't. You know he can control people, so they do terrible things. Every week, news comes. More deaths, more disappearances, more torturing. Ministry of Magic's in disarray. This is what it's like when Voldemort's in power. Jump to the beginning of the next book. Is this what it's like? No. Who expects it to be like this? Harry does. Harry does. When is it like this? Beginning of book 6, where we open with the other minister and what is described, what's going on. You got these weird fogs in London. Everybody's depressed. You got the Brockdale Bridge problem. You got the hurricane in the West End. Hurricane, really? In England? Highly unlikely. Okay? You got all hell breaking loose. Why? What's the difference between Voldemort beginning of book 5, Voldemort beginning of book 6? Beginning of book 6, everybody knows he's back. Beginning of book 5, what is the Ministry of Magic doing? What is the press doing? Slandering Harry, Dumbledore, anybody who says Voldemort is back. Okay? Notice, by the way, therefore, who the press works for. It's a tool of government. It's propaganda. It's not news. It's not investigative journalism. It is an arm of the state. I ought to try and find this article and send it to you. Just last spring, when I was teaching a very similar course, a famous German newsreader, we call them anchors in the United States, news anchor, a famous German newsreader came out and in his nightly broadcast gave like a 2-minute commentary, said, y'all need to know, this is not objective, unbiased news. He said, we are controlled by the government. We tell you what the government wants you to know. The German media prior to that looked and talked about itself like the American media does. Oh no, we're the fourth branch of government. Okay? Freedom of the press, all that. Ours is the first government in terms of constitution that guarantee freedom of the press. Not so sure how free it is anymore. Okay? So, he says times like that bring out the best in some people, the worst in others. What did it bring out in Barty Crouch, Sr.? What did he do? He was head of magical law enforcement. Shoot first, ask questions later. Notice what he could do on his own. This would be like Loretta Lynch telling law enforcement today, right, you can kill first. You can't only shoot if being fired upon. You see a suspect fleeing, shoot him in the back. If they live, you can ask questions. If they don't, one less suspect to worry about. The unforgivable curses become forgivable somehow. It kind of seems like if they're unforgivable, isn't that kind of, permanent? Okay? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? After 9/11, the media said what about George W. Bush? Anybody remember? You're all probably too young then. But right after 9/11, like 9/12, 9/13, 9/14, 9/20, after his speech to Congress, 9/21, he was portrayed as this, Wild West gunslinger who's going to bring justice to the rest of the world. Didn't help at all when, he essentially said, come get me. Okay? Which Laura said, now George, kind of heel boy. But the press portrayed him as being this warmongering maniac. I mean, the press thought we were going to be dropping nukes left and right within a week. How soon did we start launching the war against Afghanistan? It was over a month. In other words, this wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. It was thought out, it was planned, it was discussed, it was warned in advance. Either give up bin Laden, or we're going to come get him, kind of a thing. Okay? That's not the same as what Crouch was doing. If we had followed what Crouch was doing, we'd have turned the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and all the other alphabet soups of Washington loose to do completely whatever they wanted. Now, the CIA was kind of turned loose. I'm entirely in favor of waterboarding. I'll just admit that right now. No permanent damage. Torture implies permanent damage. It's what's his name in 24, getting a cigar cutter and cutting off fingers. Yeah, Jack Bauer. Kiefer Sutherland, doing things like that. You don't grow the fingers back. There's no skelegrow in the real world.
Then what do you
Okay.
call the cruciatus curse? That's torture. That doesn't leave any lasting damage.
Yes, it does.
Neville's
Neville's
parents?
parents.
Yeah. Okay, but Harry put under the cruciatus
That's
curse.
temporary.
Well,
It's painful.
So,
Yeah, I'll be the first to admit there are things that can be done that hurt like hell, but it's not permanent. If you do the cruciatus for too long, it's permanent. If you do it until what happened to Neville's parents, that's torture. I think torture. I define torture. It's got to be permanent damage. Permanent. Okay? Gouging somebody's eyes out. It's kind of permanent.
Do you consider permanent damage permanent physical damage? Because I mean, you could be put under the cruciatus curse 2-3 times and have permanent psychological damage.
Yeah, I would consider
But
that
not-
permanent damage.
But not be to the point of Neville's parents. So you're just
Sure.
you just have.
I think there could be psychological warfare that is permanent damage. Making somebody listen to Britney Spears for 48 hours without sleep. You know, being hung upside down from your ankles. I mean, we've done this. Some of this has happened at Guantanamo, where prisoners have been hung from their ankles, kept awake 48 hours, big old massive concert-sized speakers in the room with them, blaring Britney Spears. Okay? Yeah, I mean, it's just one that's been used. I don't know, maybe from some of your conversations yesterday, maybe Rick rolling would be a little better. I don't know. Britney Spears, I would do everything I could to find a fingernail I could kill myself with. Right? Anyways, so Sirius goes on, says, you know, this is the kind of person you're dealing with Party Crouch. Okay? They talk about Snape. And Dumbledore says, Hermione says, I don't care what you say, Dumbledore trusts Snape. Ron, give it a rest, Hermione. I know Dumbledore's brilliant and everything. Doesn't mean a really clever dark wizard couldn't fool him. Okay? Why did Snape save Harry's life in the first year? Why didn't he just let him die? Maybe Dumbledore would kick him out. What do you think, Sirius? Notice, Sirius, they both got a point. Why does he say this? Why does Ron have a point for Sirius? He hates Snape. Can Sirius think of Snape clear-headedly? No, he can't. Would James be able to? No, he wouldn't. Lupin? Lupin trusts Snape. Wolfsbane potion. Oops, sorry, just slipped a little bit of a, something in there. Okay. So Harry mentions the Death Eaters from, Sirius mentions a bunch of Death Eaters. Okay. By name. You talk about Karkaroff. So Sirius tells him, you guys got to get back to school, but he tells Harry, be careful, watch your back. We get the madness of Mr. Crouch, skipping, where Harry goes off in the dark with with Vicky, as Ron calls him. And he then goes up to Dumbledore's office. Come on, page, turn. He tells Dumbledore what he's seen, and while up there, skipping the dream, skipping the letter from Sirius. Come on, where is that? Chapter 30. Harry looks in the pensive. Notice it's that. It's not this. What's this? It means thoughtful. It means you're considering something. This is a pensée, thought, French thought, civ. It's something you've sift. Okay? It's a device for sifting thoughts. So Harry goes in and he sees the Wisengamot. He sees younger Moody, younger Dumbledore, younger Karkaroff, younger Snape. Okay? He sees Barty Crouch's family brought in. He sees Barty Crouch, just spit coming out of his mouth, crazy. The elder one. And then Dumbledore comes and takes him back out. And Dumbledore talks about some of the signs he sees. He conjures up Bertha Jorkins's memory. Okay. Harry asks him about Snape. That is a matter between Professor Snape and myself. He asks him about Neville. Tells him what happened to Neville's parents, and he says, don't speak about Neville's parents to anybody else. Why? Okay, it's not his secret to tell. Very true. What, pure conjecture, what might it do for Neville, for people to know that Neville's parents were great aurors who were tortured into insanity by Lord Voldemort's supporters? Would it crush Neville?
I think the comparison.
Okay, the comparison. What else could it do? Okay. Couldn't that also boost opinions of Neville a little bit? Look at his parents. Were his parents aurors when they were 12 and 13 years old? No. Do we know anything about what they were like then? No, we don't. Okay. Third task. Comment?
I would think the reason why Dumbledore doesn't want to share it too, though, is because then people are just going to pity Neville. It's going to be a pity factor more than I think already a lot of people pity Neville.
Okay, third factor, third contest, really quick. They got to get through the maze. They get through the maze by helping each other. And we get to the Triwizard Cup. We're going to end up spending, I think, a few days on Monday on this. We won't finish it all in 15 minutes. But we can kind of stretch things out a little bit. They get to the cup. What shape is Harry in? What shape is Cedric in? Tired. What shape is Harry in physically? He's injured. He's either got a broken leg or a pierced leg. Okay? Spider's over. Harry falls. He looks down at his leg, bleeding freely. He could see some sort of thick, gluey secretion from the spider's pincers on his torn robes. So it had him. Tried to get up, but his leg was shaking badly. Did not want to support his weight. It's hurt. Cedric is standing feet from the Triwizard Cup, gleaming behind him. Harry, take it. Go on, take it. Cedric doesn't move. You should. You win. You take it. You should win. It's twice you said. That's not how it's supposed to work. Come on, Cedric. He's angry. He's in pain. He's dirty. He's smelly. The one who reaches the cup first gets points. That's you. I'm telling you. I'm not going to win any races. No. Stop being noble. Yeah, take the damn cup. Just say Oxio. He could do that, right? Easily. So could Harry. You know, kind of do a Screwy-o, Cedric-o, Oxio cup. You know? Stop being noble. Just take it, then we can get out of here. What's Harry thinking about? I need medical attention. You know. Think of the Black Knight Monty Python. Cedric, you told me about the dragons. Harry, I had help. You helped me with the egg. Well, then we're square, says Harry. Cedric, you should have gotten more points on the second task. Harry, I was thick, man. I was stupid. No. He stepped over the spider's tangled legs and supports Harry. Literally gives a shoulder for Harry to lean on. Go on, says Cedric. Harry looks at Cedric, looks at the cup, looks. together? Okay, you sure? Yep, that way. Both houses, the school gets it. They get to chapter 32. They realize it's a portkey. They land on the ground. They were in a churchyard. Anybody tell you it's a portkey? Nope. Part of the test? Dunno. Wands out? Hell yes. Okay, glad Cedric made the suggestion before he did. Big, major writing error. Okay, where are they? They're in a graveyard. What is something? Turn. Something stops beside a towering marble headstone only 6 feet from them. So we have Harry Potter, we have Cedric Diggory, we have a tall, towering marble headstone. Okay. Riddle. 6 feet. They're only 6 feet. Okay? It's carrying something. Then, without warning, Harry Scar bursts into pain. He hears a voice, "Kill the spare!" Avada Kedavra. In the spare, Cedric dies. What happens when you're hit with Avada Kedavra? You plop to the ground. Usually spread-eagled. Okay? Blast of green light. Harry heard something heavy fall to the ground beside him. So, right now, where is Cedric Diggory? Dead. Where? At Harry's feet. Harry has no neck. Okay? At Harry's feet. Okay? Cedric was lying spread-eagled on the ground beside him. He was dead. And then Harry notices the tombstone says Tom Riddle. Okay? Harry's taken to the tombstone. He's tied up against it. So now, how far away is Cedric Diggory from Harry?
6 feet. Yeah, if you like fell that way. Yeah, if you couldn't.
Okay, just hold on. Cedric's body was lying some 20 feet away.
What? Wait,
Cedric's body was lying some 20 feet away. 6 feet to 20 feet, that is 3 times plus. Is this like, Lion Witch in the wardrobe and the little mice come and get Aslan's body? Bring him over here. Does Wormtail magically move his body over? It's never said. Did Cedric falling beside Harry mean he falls beside him 14 feet away? And is 14 feet away really beside? Okay. Not if you use real English, it's not. This is not only bad writing at this point. This is hellaciously poor copy editing. I edited a scholarly journal for 6 years. I edited every single article that I published. Read through every one, looking for these kinds of factual errors. I would go through, check every quotation that the person referred to. Whoever the copy editor was for this volume should be fired just over this. But there are things like this in almost all the books. Not as glaring. This is the most glaring, and I've had students come up, well, maybe she, simply because they worship the ground she walks on. Just bad. There's no other explanation for it. So, what do we see happen? Black Mass resurrection, whatever you want to call it. Voldemort is re-embodied. How? Bone of the Father unknowingly given, you will renew your son. Dust comes up. Flesh of the servant will be willingly given, you will revive your master. I'd maybe do this one at the end. Because you're not going to lose as much blood. I mean, hold off. Take Harry's blood first. Okay? But blood of the enemy forcibly taken, you will resurrect your foe. Because now he's got to do this. He's only got one hand. You know, you got to stab Harry, get the vial, hold it under. Okay? In Hocus Pocus, Voldemort Mocus. And Voldemort pops up. And we see. Okay? My lord, you promised. Hold out your arm. Wormtail holds out the arm without a hand. He goes, not that one, the other one, dummy. Okay. Oh, you mean touches it, it glows, the others approach. Who begs for mercy? This poor guy just can't get a break. Avery begs for mercy. Book 5, he gets Cruciatus. And in book 7, he gets Cruciatus. He's just a walking mistake. Why he's following Voldemort, I have no idea. Okay? So, we see what we knew, right? Who's the chief suck-up? Lucius Malfoy. How does Voldemort describe Lucius? Thank you. As slippery. Okay. Brief announcement. Office will close at 4 o'clock today for the orientation for this evening at 4:45. Those of you going to Paris with the group, orientations at 4:45. You are required. You're going to find out what time you leave. For example, I have fun with that. For the CCSA excursion to Paris, I'm pretty sure it's like 5-6 a.m. Departing Friday and returning Sunday. Usually seems like it returns around 10 or 11 p.m. It's late, okay? But at least it's supposed to be cooler in London. In Paris. And if you're interested, the movie night tonight with Paul Fisher, Quadrophenia, based on the double album by The Who. Yes, you can read that if you want. So, we'll stop there. We're going to pick up with everything Voldemort has to say, their talk, Quarium Cantatum, and the end of this novel for Monday. Monday's exam will be over this book. Okay? But reread, like you can in a weekend, the god-awful long Order of the Phoenix, which needed a really good copy editor cut out about 200 pages. I'm sorry.